chosen to read the following prompt. White Americans have way more advantages than Black Americans.
I think I'm a rarity here.
What's your shot?
Do white Americans have more advantages because they're white, or do just white Americans have advantages because of historic factors? I think if people want to argue at the end of the day over whether it's because you're white or not, I think that the answer is because you're white in the past, and that's how it kind of carries over to today. You know, even in times of the United States history where Black people tried to build wealth, you know, with
Destiny left the streamer.
This wealth has been destroyed, and something that's upsetting to me is when conservatives talk about how you can't blame the past for what's happening in the present. That is true to some extent, but then the next breath they'll talk about how important it is to have dual-parent households, how important it is to have a strong family, to have responsibility passed on.
It's indubitably important to have a functional two-parent household. I always specify functional just because two parents are in the home. That doesn't mean that you're gonna automatically become successful or automatically graduate or whatever. Run it back.
I think if people want to argue at the end of the day over whether it's because you're white or not, I think that the answer is because you're white in the past, and that's how it kind of carries over to today. You know, even in times of the United States history where Black people tried to build wealth, you know, with the Tulsa riots and everything, where this wealth has been destroyed, and something that's upsetting to me is when conservatives talk about how you can't blame the past for what's happening in the present. That is true to some extent, but then the next breath they'll talk about how important it is to have dual-parent households, how important it is to have a strong family, to have responsibility passed on from parent to child. And we've seen in the past that because of
I think all groups have advantages. All groups have advantages and disadvantages.
Built well, you know, with the Tulsa riots and everything, where this wealth has been destroyed.
It's crazy that certain people deludedly think that all white people are privileged. All white people that all white individuals are privileged. That's not the case. Not all white people, bro. Just because a person is white, that doesn't automatically mean that he or she is privileged.
In the past, and that's
not all white people are in power. Not all white people are in high positions. There's a lot of blacks that are in high positions.
This wealth has been destroyed.
Are they disadvantaged? No, they're not disadvantaged.
In the past, and that's how it kind of carries over to today. You know, even in times of the United States history where Black people tried to build wealth, you know, with the Tulsa riots and everything, where this wealth has been destroyed, and something that's upsetting to me is when conservatives talk about how you can't blame the past for what's happening in the present. That is true to some extent, but then the next breath they'll talk about how important it is to have.
Destiny's highly intellectual.
He's
highly intellectual, man. I venerate Destiny's intelligence. I don't agree with everything he says, but I do venerate his intelligence.
But then the next breath they'll talk about how important it is to have dual-parent households, how important it is to have a strong family, to have responsibility passed on from parent to child. And we've seen in the past that because of racial issues, that process has been severely disrupted.
The funny thing is that agreeing with all these things is when I did my research when I was younger, which arrived me to my standpoint of being a conservative, because I believed it was racist, Democrat, liberal ideologies and policies dating all the way back to the 1960s, and then the purported big switch. But I think it was more so when Democrats decided to be a bit more cloak and dagger about their true opinions of Black people and be more secretive and more we want to help you
covert,
by doing these things and
hidden
as inferior. Affirmative action, welfare, all sorts of things that eventually ruin our culture.
Detrimental, deleterious things.
Opinions of Black people and be more secretive and more we want to help you by.
I gotta be candid. He looks a little like Corday. He resembles Corday a little bit. He sounds like Corday a little bit too. Let me know if I'm bugging. I could be bugging. I think he does a little bit. He sounds and looks like Corday a little bit. Shout out to Corday. I saw him perform
affirmative action, welfare,
with NF live
places where we are now.
Earlier this summer.
I want to get back to the history of it because we're.
Corday's fire, bro. Fire. He's a fire rapper. Corday.
About their true opinions of Black people and be more secretive and more. We want to help you by doing these things and seeing them as inferior. Affirmative action, welfare, all
affirmative action is trash.
Ruin our culture in places where we are now. But I want to get back to the history of it because we're talking.
I just want to make sure we're clear. Giving them money hurt them, right?
Yes.
The over dependence on welfare, that's trash.
If you're living
in this housing, so then give them the money while they're
rent free.
Well, then give them the money while they're there to the home.
If you're working this amount of hours and getting blessed in this amount of
You're
dollars,
throwing-
you're getting money
You're
from the
throwing
government.
the baby.
Yes, it is
You're throwing the
incentivizing.
baby out with the bathwater.
I don't even know what that means in this scenario because yes.
You're
Okay, you want
throwing-
to talk about throwing babies out
Okay,
with
let
the
me break
bathwater?
this down.
Margaret Sanger wanted to exterminate the black race because she
Genesis.
thought they were weeds. So yeah, we can literally talk about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. That's what Margaret Sanger, that's what Democrat policies wanted to do to my people. So that's why I feel so strongly about it, because it is these policies that date back centuries that were built off of the death and poverty of my people.
Let's take a breath. So,
I'm breathing.
okay.
So a lot of babies aren't, but I am.
Bars. He spat bars right there.
When
Chandler
I say
did.
throw the baby out with the bathwater, you want to completely get rid of welfare, okay? Or at least the I don't want to put that on you, you haven't said that, but the conservative apparatus does, clearly. So, giving money to a group of people does not hurt them.
I mean, sure, you're talking about a lottery. Just
Literally
take money. But
Yes.
there are strings
Take money.
attached to that money.
Take all of
There
it.
are strings
Give
attached to
them
that money.
millions. Make them all millionaires. I don't care. Giving money to black people does not hurt them.
And that has not happened, though. That has not happened.
What do you mean?
That has not happened.
Giving no.
It hasn't been a
You're
referendum.
saying
It hasn't been
so
this or that.
what I-
It has
you're
been
saying
a welfare program,
welfare
Free
was designed-
Societies Act, that was
welfare
built
was-
off of the idea of, hey, we get these families split up. We get
Yeah.
these
So then
people
let
living
them
here.
keep the family
The
together.
destruction of the family unit.
Giving
of the
No,
household.
it hasn't been a
You're
referendum.
saying
It hasn't been this
so
or that.
what I-
It has
Take
been
the
a
man out.
Welfare
Free
was designed-
Societies Act, that was
welfare
built
was-
off of
man-
the
a
idea
man-
of, hey, we get these families split up. We get these
So
people
then let
living
them
here.
keep the family together and keep all the money.
I mean,
It
I
was-
guess
it was-
so,
it
but
was
I
quote, unquote
guarantee you-
terrible
I
for
guess
a
so,
man
but
to be
why
in the
would you
house.
not advocate for that?
So that was
Welfare
built
was-
off of
Every
the idea
household
of,
needs
hey,
a strong
we get these
man.
families split
Every-
up, we
every
get these
household.
So then
people
let them
living
keep
here.
the family together and keep all the money. Giving
No,
no.
it hasn't been a
You're
referendum.
saying
It hasn't been this
so
or that.
what I-
It has
you're
been a
saying-
welfare
Every
program,
household
Free
needs a strong
Societies Act,
father.
that
That's
was built
facts.
off of the idea of, hey, we get these families split up. We get these
So then
people
let
living
them keep
here.
the family together and keep all the money.
I mean,
There you
I
go.
guess so, but I guarantee you.
I guess
there's
so.
no way
Why
that
would you
happen.
not advocate for that?
So, in your, I guess, research of like history of this country and everything, do you find like the Reconstruction era and like the failures of like what it wanted to be and then what it ended up being, and then which led into which it had downstream effects to enter into the Jim Crow era, and you have policies like redlining that influence how schools are funded. The downstream effects of slavery, do you think put black people as generally in a worse off position than white Americans?
I think generation by generation, the effects of slavery have been diluted, but generation by generation, the effects of racism, welfare-based policies, and things of that nature became even more great. So in the 1880s or so, when we had our first black members of Congress, which were indeed Republicans, I think that was a great start for things. But obviously, we had terrible things that happened, like the Tulsa massacre, among black people being chased out of their homes by the KKK,
Yeah.
all funded by the Democrat Party, all supported by the Democrat
Okay,
Party.
Yeah.
well, I need to stop you there. Can you attribute not to the party but to the ideology? Because I think when you think, regardless of whatever the party switch was, traditionally conservative values did not that's more aligned with more racist policies in this
Very
country.
difficult to compare 2020s conservatism to 1880s conservatism. Oh, I was loving the one before.
So personally, I feel like there's really only one thing that white people have a true advantage
Xavier
over black people
DeRusso.
with, and
Shout out
it's
to
that white
Xavier
people are less-
DeRusso, man. Black conservative. PragerU.
That's more
he's
aligned with more racist policies.
one of the
Very
PragerU
difficult to compare 2020s conservatism
commentators.
to 1880s conservatism.
Shout out to Xavier DeRusso.
Oh, I was loving the one before.
So personally, I feel like there's really only one thing that white people have a true advantage over black people with, and it's that white people are less likely to be forced into a box. It happens with black people onto
That's
other black
facts.
people, but it especially happens with white liberals onto black conservatives,
Yeah.
where
Or
we're
black
told that we're supposed
dissidents,
to think a
period,
certain
not
way,
just
be a
black
certain way, and if we're
conservatives.
not, then we're called all these names like
Yeah. The vituperative
etc.
things.
And the worst of
Uncle
all is
Tom,
bootlicker,
bootlicker.
because I hate when a white liberal
Coon.
tells me as a black man that I'm a bootlicker. Because then I ask who's
Negro
doing
Pean, Fumar Constant, that clown, he calls people who
where
disagree
we are
Negro
told that we are
Pean,
supposed to
black
think a
people
certain
who
way,
disagree
be a certain
Negro
way, and if we're
Peans.
not, then we're called all these names like
They have Negrosis.
etc.
That's
And the
what
worst of all
Wokey
is
said.
bootlicker. Because I hate when a
They
white
call
liberal tells me
this
as a
against
black
race
man that I'm
traders,
a bootlicker.
this
Because
against
then I
race
ask you, whose
traders,
boot am I licking? Because you're telling me as a white person that me,
tap
as a black
dancers.
person, that I'm licking your boot because I don't think in this box that you want me to frame my mentality in.
Yeah, it's
That
horrible.
to me is
The
real
tyranny,
racism.
the cult,
And
the
that's what
hive
we need to
mentality.
stop allowing to
That stuff
happen
needs
to
to
us
cease.
because black people are so quick now to not branch out and to have new ways of thinking or to go into careers like agriculture and these other career paths that black people don't
It's not a
typically
crime to have
get
your own
into.
mind.
It's not because of racism stopping them from getting in there. It's
That's
because
not a-
we're told for so long that
Yeah,
you have to
racism
follow
is
this
not a
path and you
preclusion.
have to think a certain way.
I think America is a
Systemic
great place
racism is
for a
not a
black person.
conclusion. Your mindset, your mentality, your mentality, your work ethic,
Past that,
those things
black
are
people don't typically get
preclusions,
into.
not the white
It's not
man.
because of racism stopping them from getting in there. It's because we're told for so long that you have to follow this path and you have to think a
The
certain
negative
way.
I
program,
think America is a great place for a black person. I think I'm
Yeah.
an American.
albeit
Anything that's available
flawed.
to me is available
America
to me.
I've
is
personally
it's a
never
great country.
experienced white people having way more privileges than me. Like, I'm sure you could find certain institutions where black people are treated differently, but in general, I don't think that I've missed out on anything because
Yeah.
being black. And if anything, it's going to be more of a voice because people will want to hear what I say now because I'm black. So if anything,
Yo,
I have more of a platform now
she's
just on the basis of
perpetuiting this,
being
bro.
a
I'm
black
not gonna hold
conservative
you.
and saying
She
what's
has
not popular
perpetuity.
than I would if I was just a white person
she's
who was
pretty,
also
bro.
conservative.
Pretty and smart as well. She has both the brains and the beauty.
Basis of being a black conservative and saying what's not popular than I would if I was just a white person who was also conservative.
It's available to me and
I've personally never experienced white people having way more privileges than me. Like, I'm sure you could find certain institutions where black people
I
are
like her hair.
treated
I
differently,
dig
but
her
in
hair.
general, I don't
Straight
think
up.
that I've missed out on anything because of being black. And if anything, it's going to be more of a voice because people will want to hear what I say now because I'm black. So if anything, I have more of a platform now just on the basis of being a black conservative and saying what's not popular than I would if I was just a white person who was also conservative.
I disagree. I would not. If I was there,
I think
oh, wait, I'm bugging. Yeah, I do agree. I would have walked forward too if I was there. Yeah, I agree. Not disagree. I'm bugging. I do not disagree. I agree.
I think
It should have been abolished. It should have been
I think
overturned.
affirmative action has served its purpose. I think that it was necessary.
Race should not be a factor in college admissions, bro. It should not. Race is irrelevant, bro. It should be about merit, your performance, your grades, your test scores. That's what it should be about. I said this multiple times. We gotta stop discriminating against all groups of people, bro.
Sorry. I think affirmative action.
No group of people should be discriminated against. Asians should not be discriminated against. No group. It's not fair. It's not fair that Asians that are that have the grades, the test scores. It's not fair that they get precluded because of wokeism, bro. Of BS. They gotta get a certain number of blacks and Hispanics. Nah, bro.
I think affirmative action has served
That's
its
whack. That's whack.
I think
Legacy should not be a
affirmative
factor
action
either.
has served its purpose. I think that it was necessary for a particular time.
Yeah.
And I think that every black person knows how to get into college. Every black,
Mhm.
I mean, you can pull out the names, the Oprah, President Obama. You can pull out
Fobama.
the head of Time Warner was black man. The Forbes was black man. We know what to do now. We don't need affirmative action anymore. And to me, affirmative action is offensive sometimes, especially nowadays, because I have 6 children and 2 boys, 4 girls. And all of them went to Harvard and Columbia, this one and that one. And it breaks my heart to think that they accomplished that goal of getting into these institutions just because of the color of their skin.
I can definitely say that it creates a lot of tension when you have affirmative action. I remember my first week at the University of Illinois, I was sitting with some classmates.
Which one is he talking about? University of Illinois, Chicago, or Urbana-Champaign?
College, and I started asking what he meant, and he said to me, that he was like, you're black, I'm assuming you had decent grades. You could have just attached a smiley face and you would have gotten into the university. So I was livid by that, and I went off and started naming all my accomplishments, and I felt so confident only for about an hour. Because then an hour later, I started saying to myself, like, wow, like, did I actually earn my way in here? I started to have this insecurity, and I started wondering to myself, did I earn this position myself, or did my ancestors' suffering earn this for me?
And too, I've seen it in the sense of like affirmative action taking away from other people who are minorities. Like I had a friend who was Asian and he in high school and he really wanted to go to MIT. That was his dream school.
Yeah.
He interned there. He was super like prepared to go there, and
Academically.
he didn't get in.
Wow.
And you can only assume that it was because of affirmative action because they have such a large Asian population. They
Wokeism.
want to admit other people.
Affirmative action.
Yeah, I was going to actually argue that it's more racist nowadays because it
Discrimination.
excludes so many Asian Americans from getting into universities who do deserve a spot and they can't get in
They
because
purport to
of
be
affirmative
anti-discrimination, but
action,
they're
again, like you were saying,
proponents of
was necessary at the
discrimination.
time, but now
They
it's like
purport to be
anybody,
against
if
discrimination,
you have the
but
skills
they
to do it and you're an
are
American,
true
you can
proponents
get
of
it.
discrimination. The
Affirmative action
wokies.
is the worst thing, considering all the different types or aspects of the background you might take into account when somebody's getting into college, whether they were in certain clubs, Boy Scouts, what type of classes they took that might not be available to everybody. I don't think that factoring in the affirmative action is necessarily a bad thing, but I feel like because of everything you guys have said, the optics behind it are so horrible today that even if it is slightly beneficial in the long run for certain people, I think we can probably refocus most of that into figuring out like the class that people come from, the neighborhoods, the backgrounds or whatever, without it having to necessarily target race. The only thing that I kind of wonder now that it's gone is instead of a black person being in school thinking like, man, am I here because I'm an affirmative action pick, it's going to be a kid that is poor or a kid that's from a different zip
I
code.
think we should do away with all of it. It's just like submit an application, no demographics. Why do they ask your sexuality? Like why do they ask all this?
Yeah.
So, if affirmative action accomplished its purpose, why do we still see the disparities that we do in the professional workplace? If you average white wealth and compare it to black wealth totals, white people as a whole have about 50 times greater wealth than black people as a whole per capita. So I just don't understand why you think affirmative action has accomplished its purpose. I don't see that.
Curious, why do you assume that just because there is a disparity means it's because of a racial issue?
What else would be from?
I mean,
Upbringing, economic abilities,
Desire to go, desire to.
and
So,
zip
yeah,
code does
example.
play a lot. If you grow up in a neighborhood that experiences a lot of trauma, you're not as likely to do
A
as
bad
well in school,
environment.
which means,
Facts.
Why did they grow up in a neighborhood that experiences a lot of trauma?
I mean, lots of people do.
Yes, but why specifically to more black people?
government assistance programs.
Government assistance programs, like what?
Chart redlining.
I mean, you can go into that if you'd like to, but let's take
It
a
is
look
relevant.
at the Great Societies Act, which was created to kick black mothers out of the home and get black mothers on welfare assistance. These things aren't beneficial for economics. These things aren't beneficial
Crippling.
for actually paving a way for success for black children and black families.
Hurting
Taking,
rather than helping.
reducing a two-family household to a one-family household isn't going to make them the richest man in the world. It isn't even going to get them out of high school. Nonetheless, giving the ability to get
I don't
out.
think automatically if
The
a
child,
person
yes,
is in a one-parent
in comparison to a one-parent
household, he or she is
that
going to
child
become
usually has
unsuccessful.
is more
But I see what
exposed
he's
to
saying.
being sent in
But you're
prison,
more
fighting
likely to
crimes,
become
or not
unsuccessful,
doing very well in school.
more likely to
how are
not
they supposed to
graduate,
get
more
that,
likely to
you know,
commit
that
crimes,
wealth
be
disparity
addicted to
shrunk,
drugs,
yet they aren't even
commit
able to get out of a
suicide.
community that is
But
causing
it's not-
these problems for them.
It's not
I think
automatic.
This conversation illustrates is that like affirmative action is literally the very end of the line of a lot of different parts of a person's
It
life.
depends on
And
a
by
person's
that
mindset,
point,
mental
trying
strength,
to
mental
rectify
resilience,
all of the
mental
inequities
strength.
that have existed to try to
Everybody
remedy
has
any of
different
that at the
mindsets.
very end
People
of
are
affirmative
more,
action
certain
might just
people
be
are
too
more
broad a brush.
strong-minded
Maybe we
than
could better
others.
start focusing on the earlier issues and trying to throw a kid who maybe can barely read at a 6th grade level into a college to hope that that's the thing that fixes the problem at the end of the line.
I think affirmative action wasn't really supposed to send kids to Harvard that weren't prepared to go to Harvard. I think that's quite a myth. In fact, I think those that have the qualities to get to Harvard were before affirmative action were just completely overlooked. Clarence Thomas is like the perfect example. Regardless of what you think about him, he was able to get to Harvard because of affirmative action. Because it focused on finding people that were just overlooked.
But things ended up changing. It morphed into something else. So
It transformed
what started out as a
into
good program
some
of
woke-ish,
giving all black people or people
some bullish.
with a
some
lesser
bullish.
chance or lesser opportunity. It started out as that, and then it morphed. And I'm not sure who
It
morphed it,
turned
but
into
it morphed into okay. So now we have that one black, one Hispanic, one this, one that.
That's not how that
And
works.
but hey, talk to the corporations, talk to the people who hire, talk to the board members who say we need to have a woman on the board, we need to have a black
want to
on the
meet
board,
quotas.
we need to have
The
a Latina,
DEI.
a Latinx, whatever, on the board. So it morphed from helping us into now.
It's woke.
Yes. So you have to have one of this, one of that. And
well, when you start with a country where people only hire you if you're white, that's necessary. And I know that you said that it started good and then ended whatever. And I don't think that affirmative action was perfect by any measure, but we still see really, really bad inequality. So if you're going to get rid of affirmative action, what's the replacement?
Meritocracy.
There's no meritocracy in this country. Look at Elon Musk. He's destroying Twitter. There's no meritocracy. That's ridiculous.
Well, first thing I want to bounce back to is it's not a myth that there are like minorities that are being put into colleges that they're not ready for. If you look at a lot of these top universities, including Harvard, Yale, etc., you're going to see a lot of minorities on academic probation because they are being placed in universities that they are not ready for. They're not cut out for that just yet. And it even just makes sense if you look at how much they have to achieve in order to get there. Asian students on average have to score 450 points higher than a black student in order to get into the same
that's
university.
crazy.
So if you think of universities that have courses, etc., that grade on a curve, you can only have so many people with an A.
Affirmative action. I'm glad that affirmative action got abolished.
Is going to fail. Who is most likely, just based on logic, going to be the ones failing? It's going to be the people who didn't have the credentials to get there in the first place. And then I have to bounce back to.
I want to get you on that point because I would posit that the people who are least likely to have good outcomes in an academic setting are those who have to work 2 jobs, are those who have to drive there from home because they can't afford a dorm, are those who have to go into crippling financial debt. These are and have other stresses in their life. They can't afford a doctor, they can't afford a dentist, they can't afford anything.
I have to do
So
that too, though.
those are the
That's not just black people. It's not just.
But it's
If you look at
overwhelmingly.
straight numbers, there are more white people in poverty than black people.
If you look at the wrong numbers, but if you
I don't know
actually
what are the
understand
wrong numbers. No
The issue
numbers
is
is wrong.
poverty in general, though. I don't think it's like who's in poverty. It's like poverty sucks. It
Maybe
shouldn't
we should
matter.
make college free,
Yeah.
and maybe we want to have
If you have
affirmative action wouldn't be that necessary.
It'll get even more ghetto.
yeah.
if you have a program that says if you are under a certain income level, this is how we'll help you. That will overwhelmingly help black people at a far greater percentage than it will help white people.
Not all students who have low grades have low grades because they're deficient mentally or not intellectuals. Different things might be going on at home. That's why they have low grades. So it's not always because they're not intellectual or that they're not capable. It's just, I see, but Xavier, he's speaking facts when he says a lot.
I think that President Trump supports all lives. I think that he looks
A lot
at
of people end up on AP at these Ivy League schools because they're not prepared academically. I think Trump supports Black lives. I think
supports all lives. I think that he looks at all American citizens as equal. I don't see him doing anything that would make you feel like he does not support Black lives. That's of course going to lead into the conversation of Black Lives Matter, which was a movement and an organization with so much corruption. Donald Trump not supporting that organization doesn't mean that he doesn't support Black lives. It just means that he doesn't support
the fraudulent
organization that's
the
stealing
scumminess,
so much
the
money from so
dishonest,
many people to
the
do absolutely
dishonest
nothing with it.
organization.
Nor does he support the disruptive
unscrupulous,
movement that is destroying cities, communities,
the
lives,
disgraceful,
etc. So I don't see
disreputable,
why someone would think that President Trump doesn't support Black lives.
misappropriating organization.
I've heard him say
BLM.
He knows all
Radical,
the best black
extreme.
people. He has all the best black friends. I do support black people all the time. So sorry, that was a very bad impression, but
I think Jerez has a better
I don't think Donald
impersonation.
Trump wants bad things to happen to black people.
Respect
so in that
to this guy for
respect, I
trying.
think he does support Black lives, but the other side of that is he's not really doing anything. He didn't do anything as president, certainly, to uplift black people.
I disagree with that.
Yeah, I certainly disagree with that point. One of the biggest things
What does he do with the economy?
Well, we'll get into that one later. One of the biggest things he did is he secured permanent funding for HBCUs, one of the largest
lower
increases ever.
inflation when Trump was president.
I certainly
What is
disagree
this
with
guy
that point.
talking
One of the
about?
biggest
The
things
white
what is
dude.
the
What is this guy?
Well, we'll get into that one later. One of the biggest things he did is he secured permanent funding for HBCUs, one of the largest increases we ever saw for HBCUs, personally done by his administration, among many other things. The First Step Act, which there's a lot of debate about whether it was really the best thing to do, but that was definitely a kiss your family for years.
Yeah, but that's not like, okay, I didn't say I agree, but I agree in the sense that Donald Trump doesn't literally want bad things to happen to black people, like I think a lot of conservatives do. So I think that he just says the most yeah, I do think that. I think he says the things that will get him elected. So I don't think that he has any personal grudges against certain, most people. He just says the most popular thing. So I think like Ron DeSantis would be somebody that I think actually wants black people to be heard. So by that standard, yeah, Donald Trump supports Black lives by leaps and bounds.
You think Donald Trump says the most popular thing?
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
So why did so many people hate him?
He got elected as president.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
He didn't win the popular vote either time.
That's a
That's
liberal
what your
talking.
side wants to say.
That's
Yeah.
a liberal talking.
I'm helping you here. I'm trying to see the logic in this. Obviously, he says things to be elected as a politician very similarly to how Joe Biden did, except Joe Biden actually has a history of racism.
If
Yeah.
he said things that
Full
people
light.
didn't like, he wouldn't have been our president.
So you like everything that Donald Trump says? You think everything he says is popular?
I love a lot of the things he says. I think he's hilarious. When he said big water, that was one of my favorite quotes. Big water.
Water, big water, ocean water.
He has the funniest one-liners, so I love a lot of things he says. As far as policy, he sucks, but
I'm just shocked to wearing a Hunter Biden tag. He likes a different kind of one line.
I know
Bars.
conservatives love talking about
Xavier SPAT bars.
It's different. Coke.
I'll be back.